Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the latest, the official podcast of the Brock Press, where we take you beyond the headlines and do a deep dive into some of the many interesting articles written by our team this week. My name is Noah, and as always, I am joined by Holly Morrison, our managing editor, and Jonah Dayton, our editor-at-large. How are you both doing?
Doing well.
Doing well. Midterms are now all done.
Whew.
Yep. Time to relax for a week until final stuff starts,
Yeah.
right?
I have a paper due on Wednesday.
Oh, there you go. It never ends until it just
Until it
stops. Until it just stops one day. So I personally think we were back with a pretty heavy-hitting week this week. I think there was a lot of, there's always great articles, but always more interesting topics some weeks than others. And personally, I felt that this one kind of hit it out of the park in terms of topics. I had a lot of fun reading everything, and so we definitely have lots to talk about. With that, though, we'll just get right into it.
All right, so our first article that we're going to get into was written by Devani Shaw, our assistant news editor, and she wrote about the U.S.-Canada land border reopening and the requirements needed to return home after visiting the States. So, firstly, will you be heading over the border once it reopens?
I don't have a passport and
Really?
have not ever had a passport. It's one of those things, like when I was a kid, we went to Disney World when I was like 9, and back then that was back when you didn't need a passport to cross from Canada to the States. And so my parents were like, oh, our kids are fine. And then I was like 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and it's like I have no reason to go to the States. I'm like a child from Southern Ontario. There's like no reason. So I just never got a passport. And then recently I've been like, I should get a passport. And it's just one of those things that I've been meaning to do that I haven't. So I am like hopefully going to try and get a passport at some point because there is a hockey game in Buffalo that I really want to go to.
Because you've never been on a plane, right?
I have not ever been on a plane,
So
no.
then that checks out.
Yeah.
That does check out.
Yes.
That's funny. I didn't know it was that
yeah.
late for the passport to go to the States.
Yeah, I was like, I want to say it was like 9. It was like 2009. It was like, I remember when we came back, the Border Patrol agents like looked at my dad and they were like, next time you come through, you've all got to have passports.
So you just kind of got lucky a little.
Well, it wasn't. I think it was like they were like, we're changing the policy within the next couple months. And I was like, okay, cool.
Interesting.
We definitely don't have anything in the car.
One time, this is a complete tangent, but one time going over for a trip, me and my sisters and my parents, it's fairly late because we drive to Florida, so sometimes we're coming in or leaving early mornings and coming in late nights and things like that. So my dad's pretty tired, but he talks to the border agent, and he's the standard kind of, how are you doing today? Good. How are you? Good. Where are you coming from? Coming from Florida. Do you have anything to declare? And he says, nope, nobody. I mean, nothing. And
Oh my
just
God.
never let him live that one down. This is just like, definitely not suspicious at
No,
all.
not even
Definitely
a
not
little.
hiding anybody in the trunk or anything like that. But yeah, that was a total tangent. Anyways, I totally plan on going over. I don't know when. I used to go over a good amount, like once a month or so.
Because you're from
roughly.
St. Catharines, it's right.
Yeah, I've always lived here, and so it's it's closer to go to the States than to drive to Toronto, so we do that more often. But it's kind of weird with all the requirements, which I know we were going to talk about next, but it kind of leads into that pretty well perfectly.
Mhm.
Unless you have something to say about going over. If
No, I was like, I don't have any plans as of now to go over, but like I've been over the border many times, like Holly referenced, for sports games. Usually it was a pretty cheap event to go see the Buffalo Bisons when Vlad Guerrero and Bo Bichette were there. It was like $20 right behind home plate. But I've been to the States a fair bit, and I'm sure I'll be back sooner rather than later.
you have any like professional sports games, if you live around here, you're definitely going to Buffalo,
For sure.
because Toronto is just like unattainably expensive
Yeah, that's why
most of the time.
that's why everyone around here is like a Bills fan because it's so
Yeah.
cheap to go
Well,
see
there's
a
also no
Bills
NFL
game.
team.
And yeah.
Yeah, I've opted for the smart move of having many friends and family members with season tickets to Raptors and
good.
Blue Jays
That's
games.
great.
So that has been my connections.
Blue Jays is reasonable price.
Yes,
but even
it
then,
is.
it's the hassle for people here.
Not for
like
me, it's
in
like a
St.
subway
Catharines.
ride, 10 minutes.
No, yeah. But from here, it's like, I don't know. We're just car driving people, so like
Car driving people, yeah.
it is like
Yeah.
you wrote about that. It's It's a car-based town. It's not meant for commuting at all.
Definitely not.
So like to have to drive either into Toronto, which people hate driving in Toronto
Yep.
from around here, or driving to Burlington and then taking the GO train. And it's just it makes more sense to do the 20-ish minute drive into Buffalo, 30-minute drive to Buffalo for most of us. So it is pretty common around here to go over quite a bit. So I'm sure there's a lot of happy people, except for the negative test requirement, which technically hasn't been confirmed, but essentially what they're saying is that you're most likely going to have to present a negative test for COVID within 72 hours of returning home from the States. Even if your trip is under 72 hours, then you're able to have that test done at home. And essentially, you take that if you have a negative test that you got taken at home, you go over the border for a day, an afternoon or whatever, and you come back, you present that negative test, is what people are saying is most likely going to be the case when this opens in a week from now or so. So I think that sounds absolutely insane and stupid, but I'm curious your guys' thoughts on that.
I think we talked about this weeks ago on the podcast. Was it Hatham who wrote an article about like when you're domestic travel and all the different provinces had like slightly different COVID procedures, and he wrote about what a mess that would be. So it seemed like you did have the most most to say about this 72-hour turnaround.
Well, I mean, it is ridiculous. I think that's kind of undeniable. If the point is to stop the spread of COVID and like you're making people get tests at home, from home, when they are most likely not, like if they're feeling fine and they show up negative, they're not going to have it there. Obviously, they didn't have it at home, and then they go to the States where rates of COVID infection are way higher and vaccination is way lower, and there's way less public health measures in place, like masking and like limits on capacity and stuff. So it's like you're making them get this test at home. They go there, they come back, and they're able to use that test they had before they were exposed potentially to all this. Like, come on, there's no logic to that.
It
right?
doesn't make sense. Like, it's like I get like if they were like COVID test taken, you have to get it before you return. I'm like, oh god, that's a pain. Like, I thought that's what like the vaccines were for, but like, you know, at least okay, sure. But because they're like, yeah, you can get tested on Monday, go into the States on Tuesday, come back on Wednesday, present the test that you got before you were even in the States. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
It's either just kind of those times when like government policy falls through like the cracks of like logic and reason, or it's literally, allegedly, potentially, hypothetically, a money grab from companies that want to get these tests done. Because like there is huge money in getting these. Like they're almost $200 a pop to get it from Shoppers or a couple other pharmacies that are offering them. So like obviously they have an incentive to be offering these bogus tests. Not that the test is bogus, but the fact that you're getting it before the risk of infection even happens. Like they have a huge incentive to make that happen, right? Or to want that to be in place. So
we were also talking before we got on about the added holdup and delays, because now in addition to all the passports and declarations and whatnot and basic checks, now on top of that, like there's no way everybody's going to have all their stuff. Like someone's going to forget it, and then it's just going to make getting across the border that much
messing
longer.
It up.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because you have to check the vaccination status, which I think is fair.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fine. But then to also have this test on top of that, this test that is illogical and frankly confusing, right? The wording about it, like, who can you explain this to in 5 seconds that it would make sense to them? And yes, you can have this test for going back from the States that you took in Canada before you even went to the States. People are like, what are you even talking about? I'm just not going to get a test, like Jonah said. And then, and then waits are just going to be absurd when the border agents are dealing with these people and everyone's having to pull off to the side and wait for them to be like interrogated as if they're criminals for this. It's pretty silly. It makes a little more sense, like Holly said, for longer trips. Right? If you're above 72 hours, it does make a little bit more sense.
Because if you're above 72 hours, you have to get the test taken in the States. You have to do it while you're there.
At the very least, that makes some kind of sense.
Yeah.
Because at least it's where you've been throughout this time, right? Like, the issue though is the PCRs also do take a long time to get results. So it's even then, it's still a bit of a risky game. I mean, I
Yeah.
get that they don't want people to go over, but it's like, then why?
Why open it?
It's going to be packed. The first,
Oh, it's going to
yeah.
be absurdly packed. Absolutely. But it just, there's going to be a lot of angry people and a lot of confusion
Yeah.
for sure. And
Like with
I
all
think some
the
of it could be
steps
avoided.
and like all the money that it costs. Like for me, I'm like, yeah, I do want to go to that like hockey game in Buffalo. It's super good. I want to like meet my friends there, and like, but like the reason that I want to go to that hockey game in Buffalo is because it's cheap, it's close, and I can crash on my friend's couch that night. Like I'm doing it because it is affordable and like fun. But if I have to get a $200 COVID test, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna do that.
No,
I'm just gonna stay home.
absolutely.
Which maybe is their point, but even then, why is that an option?
Well, U.S. border towns are furious.
Mhm.
They've expressed that, like, absolutely furious at this because they know they're gonna lose a lot of that casual audience that was interested in going. But like, for example, like even around here, a little more common in like Niagara Falls because it's still a little bit of a hike for that. But some people I know do some grocery shopping and do some and we'll get gas and a little bit of stuff like that over the border just because of how much cheaper it is. But obviously, it's certainly not cheaper at a $200
Yeah.
right test. So I mean, there's a lot of issues. I'm not sure how long this can last, how long they can dig in their heels. There's a lot of lobbying going on, and it's going to just kind of intensify from U.S. border cities and border states on the government to change it because I mean, it's obviously in their interest for that to be changed. And yeah, I can't see it necessarily lasting too long, but
Yeah, U.S. border states love Canadian money.
we're the biggest. I can't remember the exact stat. I'm gonna preface that right now. This is not accurate, but it's something like we're the top country that does business with like the majority of like over half of U.S. states. Their biggest like external trade partner is Canada.
Right.
So yeah, we're a huge part of their economy, but then since they're the bigger power, they kind of have the leverage on us, right? So
Those outlet malls in like Pennsylvania were huge. Like that was always
Yeah.
a must stop with when my family and I were driving to New York.
yeah, especially less so a little bit now. I mean, the dollar's actually doing pretty decent, but like back in like when the last time Holly went over the border in
Yeah,
like
when I was a
early
child.
2010, when the Canadian dollar was worth more,
Yeah.
it was huge. Like I remember my mom would do all her Christmas shopping and like a bunch of other, like way more shopping. Now you can get probably comparable prices, just a little bit more selection because it's like they just kind of have more of different things. But it used to be like a deal to go there, right? Because it's already lower prices plus the dollar's better. So I think we're
Okay, so the next article that we're going to talk about is something a little bit more light, a little bit more fun. Jonah called it a jolly topic. So we're going to talk about just an opinion article that I wrote about hobbies. I like to write, some opinion articles that are a little bit more fun. Not quite me being angry, just me being like, this is a good, nice thing. And so my good, nice thing this week was hobbies. And I think you kind of, the headline is just, you owe it to yourself to pick up a hobby. So, play an instrument, try to learn a language, play a sport that you're bad at. And like the sort of crux of the argument is like, you can do things and not be good at them and just like enjoy them, and they can help you de-stress. There's like research that proves it. So yeah, having hobbies is great. There's like a lot of pressure on university students to like be graded and to like succeed, and like everything they do is somehow related to career performance. So I just think it's great to, cross stitch and be bad at it. And yeah, so I'm a big fan of hobbies is basically what I wrote about this week. So I thought that was kind of fun. So I just wanted to ask these two, do you have hobbies? Are they a good way to unwind?
Yes. Yes to both. I think it is important to have hobbies. Thinking about it at first, I was like, I don't have any hobbies. All I do is just like wait for more work to come up on my plate and then do that. And the rest of the time, it's just like sitting on my phone glazing over.
Yeah.
But I'm like, well, it's a lame one. I'll give you that. But I'd probably say video games
Yeah.
Yeah,
are my
that counts.
hobby. And I think it's mainly just because it's something that's like,
mindless.
and like easy to hop right into.
Yeah.
There's no driving somewhere or like set up time. You know what I mean? You just
Yeah.
kind of turn it on. I mean, it eats up a lot of my money,
Yeah,
but I'd say it kind of fits that mold that you were talking about.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it on a resume, that's for sure.
Definitely not. That's not a hobbies and skills section.
Even I was gonna say that you were talking about like things that aren't directly related to your employment prospects and stuff, but even like they'll even ask you questions in interviews
Yeah.
about hobbies, and like some people will say have hobbies on your resume, some don't, but like definitely a good chunk of people do put
Yeah.
hobbies on there. It's like, man, I have to have like
They have
every
impressive hobbies.
right. Well, like hobbies that fit like that mold of like, you know,
Yeah.
playing
Giving
video
to
games. You sound like a
charity.
lazy.
That's
Giving to
Put
charity
that
is
on a
my
resume.
hobby.
Yeah, volunteering every hour
Yeah.
that
I
I'm
love
not
soup
working.
kitchens.
But yeah, you're right. Something that you can't necessarily advertise as like
Yeah.
my hobby, just something that you do that you really connect with. But anyways, Jonah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, video games is definitely something that I do because it's mindless and you literally just can turn it on and, you know, for me it's hit baseballs virtually. But when you mentioned a few of your things, your requirements were like something that you're not great at, but is good for you and you enjoy. I think like golf is the ultimate hobby because
Yeah.
everyone's bad at it. It gets you outside and moving a little bit. It does eat up just so much money and time. I do not golf, but
No,
my
me
dad
neither.
does. I've been with him a few times. Not for me, but I think like golf really is the ultimate hobby because no one's good and it eats up time. But it gets you out and moving.
Yeah, it's like something that like you're not good at but enjoy it nonetheless. Like for me, that is also very much video games. I'm not good at video games. I could never like.
You said baking though, that you're good at baking.
I bake. That's a thing that I do.
Yeah, I'm
that's
not
another
sure
hobby.
Being bad.
Yeah,
is
I don't think that's
a
an
No, like-
necessity, but
But like you can be something that
Yeah.
you don't
Yeah.
have to have the
Yeah.
pressure that you have to be good at.
Yep.
Um.
very true.
So yeah, so video games for me is very much one of those things. And yeah, like you're saying, I would not put that I like video games on a resume. It'd be like, what's your hobby? It's like being really bad at like what I'm playing right now, which is Doom. So it's like I make aliens' heads explode but die 800 times in a level. But yeah, so it's like baking or like I have a roommate who like is learning how to do like cross-stitched needlepoint, and she really enjoys it, and she's quite good at it, but in a way where she's like, yeah, but good at it just for fun. So yeah, that's why I really like hobbies.
Yeah.
Because it's like you just said, talking about the phone, it's something that's like, and like even video games, even though it is a screen, it's something that is active. You are doing something. You're not just sitting there like scrolling, passively taking in information, which for me is where I find that like I lose a lot of time just sitting around scrolling. So having something that's like I'm making something with my hands or I'm doing something is, I think, a very good way to de-stress and unwind and not feel like I'm wasting time.
The other one for me is music.
Yes.
Love playing music.
Playing or listening?
I listen to music when I'm doing work and
Yeah.
other things. I wouldn't call it a hobby necessarily. That's even less active than
Just
playing video games.
pop
I
something
like
in
to
your
listen
ears.
to music. It's like I like to watch TV.
Do you play an instrument though?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, really?
I play a
What do you
couple. Yeah.
I did not know
I play guitar. I play bass. I play piano. I play drums.
damn.
that. Oh my god.
You're a whole band.
A little bit of
Yeah.
everything. Yeah. I play everything mediocre
Yeah.
Sure.
enough. Again, that's perfect.
Perfect,
I
yeah.
fit the perfect definition. I could. Lord knows I could never get paid to play music. No one would pay me to play it, and I'm bad at it, but I do enjoy it.
Yeah, I took guitar in high school for 2 years. Did well in grade 9, so I took it again the next year, and then grade 10 was when theory started,
Oh,
and yeah, that was it for me. Could
Yeah,
not
you
read
cannot.
that.
You don't need theory.
absolutely can't read
ridiculous.
music.
Yeah, I was never good at guitar. It was one of those things. My hands could not move that quick.
Yeah, I can't make my hands do two things at once. It's hard. I'm always impressed by anyone who can play it.
Imagine the people that sing
Yeah, that's insane.
and like dance around a stage.
Oh,
and
while
sing
playing
and
guitar?
play
Oh yeah, I know it's crazy.
So crazy.
And my roommates are very musical, so they'll be like playing an instrument or singing, and I'm just like, okay, do you guys want brownies? Here's my hobby.
Yeah, I have
Not
friends
bad.
who have like one of my friends is like played piano since he was like 5, and now he's like a licensed teacher or whatever, and like it's wild just seeing what they can do.
Monetized his hobby.
Yep.
Doesn't
Monetized
count.
Yeah, that's
Oh
like
yeah, I
people are
suppose.
always like, "What are your hobbies?" And I like as a point don't say writing as a hobby anymore. I would have like a lot before university been like, "Yeah, that's a hobby for sure." But people are like, "What are your
It's a
hobbies?"
job.
I won't say writing because like I can't write anything without being like working, and even if it's like something that I'm writing for like fun or school and not necessarily work, I'm still like, this is me getting better at the job that I do.
When was the
so
last
it's
time I
not-
wrote something for fun? Good lord.
I was just thinking like reading is a pretty obvious and go-to hobby for most people, but like I haven't read a non-school related thing since the summer. Like I just don't have time to do that.
I haven't read not rock press articles in a long time.
Yeah, aside from work and school readings.
So I definitely don't do enough of my school readings, that's for sure.
Yeah.
No, me neither. I've got like a pile of books that I definitely want to like read. It's just sitting on my shelf, like taunting me because I do like reading. I like reading a
Yeah.
lot. There's an Andy Weir novel that I bought and was so excited about, and like opened the first page and I read the first page and then I was like, dang it, I have homework and I had to close it and I haven't opened it, and that was a year ago, and I'm so bitter about that because reading is another one of those hobbies that I do really enjoy. It's not totally passive, but it is very relaxing.
I definitely did a lot of reading over COVID, especially when it was nice out and you could go outside. But
Good time to just go inside and read.
go
When it's
inside.
nice out.
Oh yeah.
I was confused, and then like, oh, he sits outside.
No, yeah, I sit
Yeah.
outside and read.
The sun.
But I cannot believe how expensive books are. Like there's a used bookstore not far from me, so I would go there for like $5, $10 a book. But like there was a book that just came out that I pre-ordered. It was like $35. It's 200 pages.
Did you get a hardcover book?
They only sell it because it just
Because
came out.
out,
It actually hasn't come out yet. It got delayed like a year, but I already pre-ordered it. But they only like that's how they get you, right? They only do the hard copy, and then like in 3 years they'll sell the paperbacks.
Yeah,
But
or the digital.
I can't read on an iPad though.
I haven't
It
tried
hurt.
it.
Yeah, I can't do it.
I need to flip a physical page.
That's why, as much as I don't like purchasing items from the campus store, I do not like reading stuff on Sakai on my computer.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what it is for me. Like somehow just like having
I love
a
Control
screen,
F.
can't do it.
Yeah,
I do
that
love
is
Control F.
that is
That's
handy.
what I like about the online textbooks. Is search
Yep.
keywords.
I've typically bought if there is an online version of a textbook, I will buy it because it's cheaper. But in terms of like if I have to read something, I would prefer to do it physically rather
Interesting.
than.
And it's a textbook. I'm not reading the whole thing.
Yeah,
It's
no.
fun.
No, of course not. But that's why I like because it can do that scanning for me. Control F. That's the best.
It's very nice.
I just bought a book, hardcover, like coffee table style book.
Mm.
It was like $75.
No, yeah, coffee table books are expensive because they're like big and have pictures.
And the high quality photos. I
Yeah.
love it.
Does it have like the glossy paper? Because that'll put you up.
Well, the photos all have kind of like a
Yeah.
different finish to that paper, right? Because you have some pages that are full just photo, right? But like I love it, but it was very expensive. I'm not big on fiction, but like, well, I haven't been big on any books. I'm kind of like Holly. I just keep
No one
buying them, and
doesn't
I have like half a dozen books from like the last couple of years that I have every intention of reading at some point.
Yeah, I buy like so many books that like the people at the Kohl's and the Penn Center like know me by name now. And I remember I was in there one time a year ago, and at that point I was reading books like crazy. And the lady at the cash register was just like, "Hey, you've got like the Plum Rewards card, just like the free version. Do you want to get the paid version? It's only $30." And between you and me, we would lose money on you. And so like I do have like the paid subscription. So the books that I do buy do end up being cheaper because of that.
Books Plus.
Yeah, it's like Plum Plus or something, and like genuinely, it's the dorkiest subscription that I have. But like, damn, I save a lot of money.
Plum Prime.
Plum Prime.
No, hobbies are great.
Yeah,
Hobbies are great.
but suck a lot of money sometimes. But you know, I think it's worth it.
I think that's the key that they're trying. I think you're working for Big Hobby.
I'm working for Big Hobby. Oh no.
Well, that's
Lord, man, I spend so much money on hobbies, even if I'm not like even reading, even if I don't do it. My hobby is like buying books to not read.
Well, that's the
Hobbies
like
have
the
bookshelves.
downside is that people get into something like they're really into something for like a week, then they buy all the gear necessary, and then like a month later they're done. They just have all this stuff lying around.
Unless you make a small business out of it.
But that's not a hobby, as we
Then you
Unless
got
you
an
make
Etsy
it
store.
discuss.
Unless you make an Etsy store for reading.
My favorite thing is that if I get really into a hobby, I will. My sister's not gonna listen to this, so it's fine. I will get really into a hobby and I'll do it. Like one day, I'm like, oh, I'm really into cross stitch, and then Christmas will come around and I wrap up all the hobby gear and I'm like, I think you should try cross stitch and give it to my sister.
That's the best.
And
Smart.
I think that's pretty smart.
Better than returning it.
Yeah, I think so.
Just regift. And on a more serious note, the last article we're going to talk about is my editorial about a big missing persons case that's been, well, it's not wrapped up per se 100%, but largely wrapped up. It's been going on since the start of September. The case of Gabby Petito is her name. She's a Florida 22-year-old young woman who went on a hiking trip, cross-country van hiking trip, camping trip with her fiance, and then infamously he returned home without her. Him and his family retained a lawyer and refused to talk to anyone, including her family, about her whereabouts. Later, she was found dead in a national park in Wyoming. It was found that later that she was killed by strangulation. And then later, her fiance was found after he went missing. Shortly after it came out that she was missing, he fled his house, didn't come back. And now, in the last week or so, his remains were found. No cause of death has been determined yet, although, there's a lot of theories on that online, but I will save the speculation on that. Save us that. But anyways, I wanted to talk about this case because it's definitely gripped me and got my attention. But I'm one of millions of people across the world that got enamored by this case and found it incredibly interesting, found it relatable in certain respects, especially, they were our age, 22 and 23. And personally, I know a few people that have done trips like them, people that have bought and renovated vehicles, school buses and vans and things like that, and have been kind of trekking around, and even just people who kind of visited a bunch of national parks and kind of did that for a few months. Obviously, they didn't end like this. They were, fun trips for them, but it hit close to home, I think, for a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And so I think that's part of why it garnered the attention that it did. But, the other half of my article then kind of goes into the other part of that, which is something called missing white woman syndrome, a very real phenomenon that has been measured in regards to media coverage of missing persons cases, which largely favor young, middle-class white women from, strong family backgrounds and things like that, that just kind of fit a certain archetype that, people are, because of kind of implicit racial kind of prejudice and things like that, are more inclined to not support, but like empathize with and kind of connect with. So there's a lot of claims, and I think to a degree justifiable claims, that this case falls under that kind of, phenomenon, or kind of like social observation. It kind of just fits that mold. And to a degree, I certainly agree with that, but I think it does go a little deeper. But anyways, we'll get into that shortly. I'm just curious to break up the depressing talk of me talking about this. Just if you guys had any, knowledge of this case before my article, and any thoughts that you had on it, anything that you went into it with, or anything like that.
Yeah, I never got super into it or anything. Just not really the kind of thing for me. I do enjoy some good true crime, but I guess for me, just the idea of following an active missing persons case where a person has not been found and then was later found dead, for me that was just a little bit too, I guess, sad and depressing and real in that moment. So I didn't really follow it, but I did see sort of tweets and Facebook posts and TikToks and stuff about it.
Yeah, I'd never heard of it until Noah wrote an editorial, and I read it a few days ago. But that is, I was saying to Noah earlier that I don't have Instagram or TikTok, so did not really know about it until Noah wrote the article. Then obviously I went on the Wikipedia page and read all of the bullet points on that and whatnot. So that was definitely the first I heard of it, but realized that like the crime was pretty much solved by the internet.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. It is pretty remarkable to learn about all the ways that the online community helped out in this case. I'm a like casual follower of this stuff on YouTube. Like, recommended started coming in when this case was getting going off the ground, early mid September. It was big online at that time. It had not garnered the attention of mainstream media yet, but I was starting to see it then. And I can see, Holly, your point that it's kind of awkward and uncomfortable to follow an active investigation, but I kind of just got into the almost like the thrill of that. I found that really interesting to listen to live streams, people literally sharing stuff that you read about a couple days later in like actual news publications and news media. Like, they're like, oh yeah, so this person on TikTok actually did find, they actually were involved with these people at some point, and they talked to FBI and it checks out, and they help, they actually helped find her body. Was another YouTube couple. They had video of where they their van was last seen. It's chilling. I agree with what you said before. It's dark and creepy and can be a little depressing, but I just found that it was just so engaging.
Yeah,
seeing something like that unfold,
Yeah, like definitely, like I do like see the appeal. Like, not like I don't think that anyone's like a bad person for being like fascinated by that kind of thing. It's just not like I used to be like super into true crime, and then I was like, I'm related to like the whole missing white woman syndrome thing, is like white women listening to true crime podcasts and then becoming incredibly paranoid for unjustifiable reasons. So that was one of the things where I was like, I gotta stop like listening to this stuff so often, which is probably why I didn't like see or follow this case.
You had mentioned writing about this for a while now, but it was, I guess, kind of good that you waited, because the guy,
glad I waited.
Yeah, because when you initially came up with the idea, had anyone been found?
No, that's what I don't even think he was missing.
Yeah.
No.
So I was going to just kind of drop in 2 cents early on, but I'm definitely glad to have waited to get, it's again, not a full picture. And I even mentioned that in the article. It's very tragic that almost certainly will never be a full picture in this case, but essentially it's hit the end of the line in terms of, where things are going to be able to go tragically. But yeah, I am happy to have waited for that, because I think it does the whole story a little bit more service to cover it in this way, rather than having to have speculated about anyone's whereabouts. I think it is good that it did get the attention it got for a couple of reasons.
Yeah.
But then that also kind of brings me to my point about missing white women syndrome, which is, I'm not, trying to say that this is not kind of a textbook example of that. I do understand that, and I believe that. But the information that this garnered, the attention it garnered, has and will, I think, continue to be for good, largely because of the actions of her family since then. So they've been quick to set up a foundation to support missing persons cases that don't receive the attention they did, and to support domestic violence survivors and organizations that support them. So, and they raised $13,000 in their first ever fundraiser for this. And mind you, that's, they found the daughter just over a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
So they've been quick to act, and they've been quick to raise this money, and have certainly been, eagerly pushing people to continue this kind of momentum and passion into other cases, and to continue that fervor. And they said, people of all races and backgrounds they're supporting, and will be supporting, this money will be supporting those searches.
You said, it's not that her, the fact that she's, a young, attractive, white, middle-class woman, that doesn't have nothing to do with the fact that she got attention, but it is sort of reductive to say that that's the only reason she got attention.
And I think reductive to say that is the reason this case has any attention, so let's just forget about it. Clearly there was value in the passionate group that was kind of informally kind of amassed around this case, and I think her family's doing a really good job of trying to capitalize on that for the sake of others. And I don't think just saying, what about this, what about that, does that. I think it's kind of cynical, personally. Not all the people doing that, I get it. There's, but I think there's a lot of the armchair critic community that is just keen on throwing a wet blanket on things like this.
Well, that was what you had mentioned in the bottom of your article. That was like the parents are handling this as best they can, and using sort of all the attention. They're taking advantage of all the attention that has come with the case to raise a lot of money for good causes.
Yeah, for others who are not as fortunate to have that type of attention. They're doing what they didn't ask for it. Every case asked for attention, but they didn't, right? They didn't say, give it all to us and nobody else and just help us only. Like, fortunately had people that, again, connected with communities that were around them, right? Like, national parks it's a big thing now. The influencer kind of
camping and hiking now, because COVID, it's like the only thing you can do. Or before, it was
right. So people had video, right? These people had been in some of the most popular national parks in the United States. So odds are someone has a video camera, someone is filming something on their phone, anything, and all that stuff kind of came up through this, and that kind of kept the snowball rolling, which also kind of fights the traditional missing white woman syndrome narrative, of the news media leading the charge on it, right? Honestly, a lot of them were the cynics trying to say that it's, an example of missing white woman syndrome, which, again, I'm not saying it isn't, but like the fact that that's all the news media had to say, especially since they've been the culprits of missing white woman syndrome for decades, to me felt a little bit rich personally. But
yeah, it was all very like you talked about it snowballing. It did feel very sort of like algorithm based, and like you can't really, and like obviously that says something about the way that algorithms prioritize white people, but you can't really blame people for seeing a video about someone and then more videos coming up and that generating interest. So I do think that it very much was like a social media phenomenon, not a traditional missing white woman syndrome thing of like someone in a news office being like, missing persons cases, okay, let's find the one that our audience will empathize with, which is, the sweet, nice, plucky, blonde college girl kind of missing white woman thing.
The audience found that on their own.
Yeah.
Well, no, but through algorithm. You're right. You are right. It is larger and structural. The missing white woman syndrome is a structural critique. Like,
yes.
And talking about, again, like the tech companies and the algorithms, like you mentioned, right? Their racial preferencing, cannot be ignored, right? Algorithms are not unbiased, whether, no matter how much we try to present them as such. So I think that's a better angle for missing white woman syndrome, even in this case, not just to say, who cares about this person who's missing? What about this person? Like, to me, that's so, it just came off very smug and not necessarily empathetic to the moment and understanding of what could come of this, right? In the moment, versus like the structural case you want to make to change it long term. But
yeah, like it's very much like this is a structural issue that should be fixed. And it's very much possible to care about two tragedies at the same time. So yes, of course, missing white woman syndrome, an issue. Of course, every single missing person deserves to be found and have justice. But that does not negate the fact that Gabby Petito went missing. She is also a person who is deserving of empathy, even if she does fall into this sort of archetype of...
Yeah, she didn't choose that, right?
She did not decide to do that.
Yeah.
You wrote this as well, but because the likeliest of suspects, her fiance is now dead, that the justice that he will face is now... Yeah, that's not possible.
I mean, there's no chance of that, which is also probably the most tragic part, is that he was the one going to face trial. So either he was going to be found not guilty and, the justice system would have worked out that way, or he would have been found guilty and the justice system would have, whatever the result would have been, he would have at least faced trial, but that's gone. So that's quite tragic in this case as well.
Yeah, I think there's just like a whole bunch of like layers of like systemic tragedy and like structural tragedy, and then also like a very real individual tragedy that like happened to this family of this person who, from everything that I saw about her, was like a very bright, kind, sort of thoughtful, empathetic person.
Yeah. And I actually saw something the other day that nearly a dozen other missing people were found throughout the searches for her.
Oh,
Yeah,
I think
and
that's
him.
kind of
And him.
definitely
and
like
him. Yeah.
an
Right.
indictment of how missing person cases
Yeah.
are handled.
Yeah.
It's like
It's
it
crazy.
took attention for them to,
Yeah.
search.
Well,
But there was
isn't-
an LGBTQ couple in the same area as where she went missing. They were found, which was a case that had been going on nearly the same time, though that one was kind of settled more quickly. There was a few people of color I know that were found in the midst of all this. And again, they might not have gotten the media attention, but again, there was a kind of a knock-on effect of what did happen here, that there was so much additional kind of focus and kind of eyes on missing people that you got good knock-on effects. And again, it's not to negate that it's not a structural issue, right? There was a white woman leading the charge of this
Yeah.
this like search and effort for a reason. Like it is a design issue,
I think
design
when people
flaw,
start
but
like
it's still
yeah.
good things did end up happening. So let's just not white woman syndrome, right?
I think people get caught up in like the idea of like what should happen, which is what should happen is like all missing persons cases should receive the right
Yes.
amount of attention.
Yep.
That is what should happen in like a just and fair society. But then there's the reality of what is and has happened, which is that we do not live in a just and fair society.
Yep.
And so then this has happened. These people have been found because of this, and that is more a indictment of
Yes.
structures than of
Yes, exactly. Because it's not, can't be mad at the people who were brought in and putting in so much effort and help contribute to good things happening. It's bigger than any person.
And didn't you
any
say
individual.
this case would likely have not been solved had it not been for the attention and social media activity?
It certainly would have taken longer.
Right.
I mean, it's a humongous. It's called the Grand Teton National Park. I think it goes into 3 or 4 states. And so how are you supposed to narrow that down,
Yeah.
right? Without the footage from all these people, like, would have been months.
Yeah.
You know? And then you would have had none of these other additional people saved in this instance. So it's like the best
I think
possible outcome.
there were a lot of people who made sort of a positive out of a very like tragic, negative situation, whether that's her family or other people who, were helping with the search, who were helping to, locate other missing people.
And that does it for another episode of The Latest. A long one, but thanks for bearing with us. Thanks for bearing with me, because I had to go off on that story after holding that in for months. But thanks, Holly and Jonah. I appreciate you guys taking the time and talking about these great articles. And there's so many more at our website, www.brockpress.com. So be sure to check all of these ones out and all of those ones out there. You can find the articles we talked about specifically in this episode in the show description. But like I said, there's so many more there. On top of following us on our website and keeping up with us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at The Brock Press, be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, and Radio Public. Just be sure to look up The Latest, The Brock Press Podcast, and you should find us with no issues. You can also find the podcast on our YouTube channel and also, again, on our website. With all that said, though, thanks for sticking around. We'll see you next week for another episode.